Konnichiwa. This is the Shogunstein. And this is a look at the book Sengoku Jidai, Nobunaga, meaning Oda Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, the three unifiers of Japan. Sengoku period. Through patience, Ieyasu will eventually unify Japan, and his family will rule for over 250 years. But Oda Nobunaga, until he was assassination attempt, and eventually he did commit suicide, but his own people turned on him. Then Toyotomi Hideyoshi kind of blew it with his invasion of Korea to try to get to China, but also the fact that he was born a peasant. He never fully had the support of the daimyo. And then Ieyasu will, even though he promised to be there for the heir, once we got to Osaka castle battle, we unfortunately know how it's going to end for Hideyoshi's heir. But this is the story of the three unifiers of Japan. Danny Chaplin, who I believe is out of Singapore. If I had known that earlier, when I was in Singapore this summer, I would have tried to look him up or make contact. So this is a look at the unification of Japan, a part of history I am really interested in. Problem with studying this history is there's not a lot in English. There are like these little Osprey type books that you can look at, about Sekigahara, Osaka Castle, but there's not a lot in English. This is one of the only books about this whole period in English, so I'm looking forward to the author's take on it. And one of the things I'd be curious about is, how did this author go through the Japanese sources? I don't know if this author speaks or reads Japanese. So again, when I go to Japan, sometimes I get these great Sengoku Edo period, books or comics, and unfortunately I can't read them. So obviously there's a lot of material out there, just not a lot, it seems, in English. Something that kind of held me back on this book was the price. I don't know why. Again, maybe it's from a limited lot. Maybe Danny Chaplin can comment on the video. But on Amazon, this book is like $40. I received it as a gift for the holidays. Thank you to my brother. But I did get it as a gift. $40 was something that I really didn't want to pay for a book. It is on the Kindle, but this is a book that I want to be able to hold and highlight and write in. Maybe I should have gotten it for my trip this summer. One of the things I did do this summer is I found a private tour guide online, my buddy Hideo, and I was in Osaka this summer for a day, like a 9-hour day, despite a record heat wave. And my buddy Hideo, my tour guide, gave me a really in-depth bucket list tour of the siege of Osaka Castle, involving Ieyasu and ultimately the destruction of the Toyotomi clan. The summer and winter campaign, 1614, 1615. Got to go to Osaka Castle. Also, Hideo took me to some places that I never, ever would have found. So there's all kinds of interesting things that I learned. I did a lot of research before the trip, again, with those sort of small Osprey books. There's that one author who does a lot of that kind of Japanese samurai history, and his stuff is very good. I think it's like Stephen Turnbull or something like that. His stuff is very good, but he's like the only guy, and these are usually kind of thin books. So I'm looking forward to going through this, and we are planning to go back to Japan, not this summer, but next summer. And I'm hoping this time I'm going to go to the temple in Kyoto, where they tried to assassinate Nobunaga, and he died shortly after as a result of that assassination attempt. And I really want to finally go to Sekigahara, see if I can make my way there. Again, this past trip, I did do a lot of research before I went. Maybe I should have gotten this book before the last trip. Again, I don't know why this book is $40. Again, maybe it's just a small run. Again, Danny Chaplin, if you can get onto the comments and explain why the print copy of this book is $40, we'd love to know. But that was certainly something that prevented me from getting it earlier. Again, it's only $10 on the Kindle, which is, not bad at all. But this is, again, a book that I'm going to want to have in hand and be able to look at, quotes, and I don't know if there are pictures or maps in here, but I'm really looking forward to reading this because there's not been anything really this in-depth in English on this time period. Again, there is a book on the Sekigahara battle. There's an old biography of Ieyasu from Conrad Topman, which is an excellent book, but I read that like 30 years ago. It's a very good book, but it's old. Obviously, you can read, that's The Sound of Freedom, by the way, here. We're near Luke Air Force Base. Obviously, you can read fiction and read Shogun, because Toranaga is Tokugawa Ieyasu, and that book has a lot of the history right. And obviously, it's a very entertaining way to get that story. So again, this is the Warring States period. So Japan, partially because of geography, you have all these different clans, all these different families fighting. The emperor doesn't really have power. You have all these daimyo and their clans trying to get to be the shogun, who's going to unify Japan. And there's an old story about, the bird that won't sing. Nobunaga is going to crush it. Hideyoshi is going to force it. But Ieyasu will wait for it to sing. So looking very forward to this book. And again, maybe it is good that I'm reading it now, because on our trip this summer, it was my 5th trip to Japan, but Mrs. Shogunstein had never been there. Little Shogunstein hadn't been there. So we did do a lot of, touristy, fun things to do in Tokyo and Kyoto. Shibuya Crossing, going to the anime district, going to see the Golden Pavilion in Kyoto, like a Kyoto City tour, all the things that you would expect to do, especially if people were in Japan for the first time. So if we're going back in 2027 as planned, little Shogunstein will be 20. He can do his own thing. Obviously, Mrs. Shogunstein is mature enough to do her own thing. Obviously, we want to do things together. But maybe this time around, I will have more time to go in depth and get to Sekigahara, to get to some of these other, again, this last trip, wonderful day despite the heat in Osaka. Big shout out to Hideo. But maybe it's time to go really in depth, get to Sekigahara, get to that temple in Kyoto. It's supposed to be a great museum of some of the artifacts and items that Nobunaga had. So maybe with everyone being older and having been there already, time for me to do a real deep dive. So this is a pretty thick book, so obviously it's going to take me a while to get through it, and I'm really going to go in depth. So when I'm done reading it, I don't know how long it's going to take, I will give an actual review of the book. Again, I'm curious as to, did this author just use the few sources that there are in English to do this? Or did he translate the stuff himself? Did he have a translator? How did he get information, from the Japanese to the English? Maybe if I fly through Singapore again, like we did last time, maybe I could get a chance to talk to Danny Chaplin. I appreciate him writing this book. I'm looking forward to it quite a bit. Thank you again to my brother for, paying $40 for a book, something I wouldn't do, even though this is a subject I really like. So again, maybe this is self-published. Maybe that's part of the reason. So Danny Chaplin, Sengoku Jidai. Again, that's the Warring States period, unification of Japan. Again, with a focus on Oda, Toyotomi, and Tokugawa. This is the Shogunstein out.